Good evening, residents of the Restless, and welcome to episode 20, Hitchcock's Tales That Terrify. Shadows from the Master on SL tonight. Unsettling the Master's curated haunts, linking his afterlife with stories that lingered. From troll bridges, we move into One of the Dead, by William Wood, a 1964 ghostly suburban chiller from the anthology. A young couple snags a bargain home in a quiet neighborhood. But strange happenings, odd neighbors, unexplained noises, a sense of being watched, reveal the area's deadly secret. It's inhabited by the undead, or spirits. Wood's slow burn dread and ironic bargain twist capture Hitchcock's everyday evil. In the 1980s, Hitchcock's legacy lived on through remakes like Psycho 2, 1983, extending his psychological horrors. This posthumous era mirrors the story's lingering dead. Settle in, story awakened. We couldn't have been more pleased. Deep in Clay Canyon, we came upon the lot abruptly at a turn in the winding road. There was a crudely lettered board nailed to a dead tree which read, "Lot for sale, 1500 or best offer," and a phone number. $1,500 in Clay Canyon? I can't believe it, Ellen said. Or best offer, I corrected. I've heard you can't take a step without bumping into some movie person here. We've come 3 miles already without bumping into one. I haven't seen a soul. But there are the houses. Ellen looked about breathlessly. There indeed were the houses. To our left, and our right, to our front, and our rear, low, ranch-style houses, unostentatious, prosaic, giving no hint of the gay and improbable lives we imagined went on inside them. But as the houses marched up gradually climbing road, there were not a single person to be seen. Cars, the Jaguars, and Mercedes and Cadillacs and Chryslers were parked unattended in the driveways, their chrome gleaming in the sun. I caught a glimpse of one corner of a pool and a white diving board, but no one swam in the turquoise water. We climbed out of the car. Ellen, with her rather large, short-haired head, stooped forward as if under a weight. Except for the fiddling of a cicada somewhere on the hill, a profound hush lay over us in the stifling air. Not even a bird moved in the motionless breeze. There must be something wrong with it, Ellen said. It's probably already been sold, and they just didn't bother to take down the sign. There was something here once, though. I had come across several ragged chunks of concrete that lay about randomly as if heaved out of the earth. House, do you think? It's hard to say. If it was a house, it's been gone for years. Oh, Ted, Ellen cried. It's perfect. Look at the view. She pointed up the canyon towards the round, parched hills. Through the heat shimmering on the road, they appeared to be melting down like wax. Another good thing, I said. There won't be much to do to get the ground ready except for clearing the brush away. This place has been graded once. We saved $1,000 right there. Ellen took both my hands. Her eyes shone in her solemn face. What do you think, Ted? What do you think? Ellen and I had been married 4 years, having both taken the step relatively late, in our early 30s, and in that time had lived in 2 different places. First an apartment in Santa Monica, then, when I was promoted to office manager, in a partly furnished house in Hollywood Hills, always with the idea that when our first child came, we would either buy or build a larger house of our own. But the child had not come. It was a source of anxiety and sadness to us both, and lay between us like an old scandal for which each of us took on the blame. Then I made an unexpected killing on the stock market, and Ellen suddenly began agitating in her gentle way for the house. As we shopped around, she dropped hints along the way. This place is really too small for us, don't you think? Or we'd have to fence off the yard, of course. That let me know that the house had become a talisman for her. She had conceived the notion that perhaps in some occult way, if we went ahead with our accommodations for a child, the child might come. The notion gave her happiness. Her face filled out, the gray circles under her eyes disappeared, The quiet gaiety, which did not seem like a gaiety at all, but a form of peace, returned. As Ellen held on to my hands, I hesitated. I am convinced now that there was something behind my hesitation, something I felt then only as a quality of silence, a fleeting twinge of utter desolation. "It's so safe," she said. "There's no traffic at all." I explained that. "It's not a thorough street. It ends somewhere up in the hills." She turned back to me again with her bright, questioning eyes. The happiness that had grown in her during our months of house hunting seemed to have welled in her near rapture. "We'll call the number," I said. "But don't expect too much. It must have been sold long ago." We walked slowly back to the car. The door handle burned to the touch. Down the canyon, the rear end of a paneled truck disappeared noiselessly around a bend. "No," Ellen said. "I have a feeling about this place. I think it was meant to be ours." And she was right, of course. Mr. Carswell Deeves, who owned the land, was called upon to do very little except take my check for $1,500 and hand over the deed to us. By the time Ellen and I met him, we'd already sold ourselves. Mr. Deeves, as we suspected from the unprofessional sign, was a private citizen. We found his house in a predominantly Mexican section of Santa Monica. He's a chubby, pink man of indeterminate age, dressed in white ducks and soft white shoes, as if he'd had a tennis court hidden away among the squalid, asphalt-shingled houses and dry kitchen gardens of his neighbors. "Going to live in Clay Canyon, are you?" he said. "Ross Russell lives up there, or used to." So we discovered, did Joel McCree, Jimmy Stewart, and Paula Raymond, as well as a cross-section of producers, directors, and character actors. "Oh yes," said Mr. Dees. "It's an address that will look extremely good on your stationery." Ellen beamed and squeezed my hand. Mr. Dees turned out to know very little about the land, other than that the house had been destroyed by fire there years ago, and that the land had changed hands many times since. "I myself acquired it in what might strike you as a novel way," he said as we sat in his parlor. Dark, airless rooms which smelled faintly of camphor and whose walls were obscured with yellowing autographed photographs of movie stars. "I won it again my hearts from a makeup man on the set of Wild Vegas. Perhaps you remember me. I had a close-up in one of the crowd scenes." "That was a number of years ago, Mr. Dees," I said. "Have you been trying to sell it all this time?" "I've nearly sold it a dozen times," he said, "but always something went wrong." "What kind of things?" "Naturally, the fire insurance rates up there put off a lot of people. I hope you're prepared to pay a high premium." "I've already checked into that." "Good. You'll be surprised how many people will let details like that go to the last minute." "What other things have gone wrong?" Ellen touched my arm to discourage my wasting any more time with foolish questions. Mr. D spread out the deed before me and smoothed it with his forearm. "Silly things. Some of them. One couple found some dead doves." "Dead doves?" I handed him the signed article. With one pink hand, Mr. Dees waved it back and forth to dry the ink. "5 of them, if I remember correctly. In my opinion, they sat on a wire or were executed somehow. The husband thought nothing of it, of course, but his wife became so hysterical that we had to call off the transaction." I made a sign at Mr. Dees and dropped this line of conversation. "Ellen loves animals and birds of all kinds with devotion that turns the loss of a household pet into a major tragedy, which is why, since the death of her Cocker Spaniel, we've had no more pets." But Ellen appeared not to have heard. She was watching the paper in Mr. Dees' hand fixedly, as if she were afraid it might vanish. Mr. Dees sprang suddenly to his feet. "Well," he cried, "it's all yours now. I know you'll be happy there." Ellen flushed with pleasure. "I'm sure we will," she said, and took his pudgy hand in both of hers. "A prestige address," called Mr. Dees from his porch as we drove away. "A real prestige address." Ellen and I are modern people. Our talk in the evenings is generally on issues of the modern world. Ellen paints a little, and I do some writing from time to time, mostly on technical subjects. The house that Ellen and I built mirrored our concern with present-day aesthetics. We worked closely with Jack Manson, the architect and a friend who designed a steel modular house, low and compact and private, which can be fitted into the irregularities of our patch of land for a maximum of space. The interior decor we left largely up to Ellen, who, combed the home magazines and made sketches as if she were decorating a dozen homes. I mention these things to show that there's nothing gothic about my wife and me. We are as thankful for our common sense as for our sensibilities, and we are flattered ourselves that the house we built achieved a balance between aesthetic and the functional. Its lines were simple and clean, and there were no dark corners, and it was surrounded on three sides by houses, none of which were more than 8 years old. There were, however, signs from the very beginning, ominous signs which could be read only in retrospect, though it seems to me now that there were others you suspected but said nothing. One was a Mexican who cut down the tree. As a money-saving favor to us, Jack Selmanson agreed to supervise the building himself and hire small independent contractors to do the labor, many of whom were Mexicans or black people with dilapidated equipment that appears to run only by some mechanical miracle. The Mexican, a small, forlorn workman with a stringy mustache, had already burned out 2 chainsaw blades and still had not cut halfway through the tree. It was inexplicable. The tree, the same one on which Ellen and I had seen the original for sale sign, had obviously been dead for years, and the branches that already lay scattered on the ground were rotted through. You must have run into a batch of knots, Jack said. Try it again. If the saw gets too hot, we'll pull it down with the bulldozer. As if answering to its name, the bulldozer turned at the back of the lot and lumbered toward us in a cloud of dust. The black shoulders of the black operator gleamed in the sun. The Mexican need not have feared for his saw. He had scarcely touched it to the tree when it started to topple of its own accord. Startled, he backed away a few steps. The tree had begun to fall towards the back of the lot in the direction of his cut, but now it appeared to arrest itself, its naked branches trembling as if in agitation. Then, with an awful rending sound, it writhed right and fell back on itself, gaining momentum and plunging directly at the bulldozer. My voice died in my throat. The Jack and the Mexican shouted, and the operator jumped and rolled on the ground just as the tree fell high on the hood, shattering the windshield to bits. The bulldozer, out of control and knocked off course, came directly at us, ears whining and gouging a deep trough in the earth. Jack and I jumped one way and the Mexican the other. The bulldozer lurched between us and ground on towards the street, the black sprinting after it. "The car!" Jack shouted. "The car!" Parked in front of the house across the street was a car which was certainly brand new. The bulldozer headed straight for it, its blades striking clusters of sparks from the pavement. The Mexican waved his chainsaw over his head like a toy and shouted in Spanish. I covered my eyes with my hands and heard Jack grunt softly, as if he'd been struck in the midsection just before the crash. 2 women stood on the porch of the house across the street and gaped. The car had caved in at the center, its steel roof wrinkled like tissue paper. Its front and rear ends were folded around the bulldozer as if embracing it. Then, with a low whoosh, both vehicles were enveloped in creeping blue flame. "Rotten luck," Jack muttered under his breath as we ran into the street. From the corner of my eye, I caught the curious sight of the Mexican on the ground, praying, his chainsaw lying by his knees. In the evening, Ellen and I paid a visit to the Sheffits, Sandra and Jeff, our neighbors across the canyon road, where we met the owner of the room car, Joyce Castle, a striking blonde in lemon-colored pants. The shock of the accident itself wore off with the passing of time and cocktails, and the 3 of them treated it as a tremendous joke. Miss Castle was particularly hilarious. "I'm doing better," she rejoiced. "The Alfa Romeo only lasted 2 days, but I held on to this one a whole 6 weeks. I even had the permanent plates on." "But you mustn't be without a car, Miss Castle," Ellen said to her in a serious way. "We'd be glad to loan you our Plymouth until you can—" "I'm having a new car delivered tomorrow afternoon. Don't worry about me. A download, Jeff. You'll be interested to know. I couldn't resist after riding in yours. What about the poor bulldozer man? Is he absolutely wiped out?" "I think he'll survive," I said. "In any case, he has 2 other dozers." "Then you won't be held up," Jeff said. "I wouldn't think so." Sandra chuckled softly. "I just happened to look out the window," she said. "It was just like a Rube Goldberg cartoon. Chain reaction. And there was my poor old Cadillac at the end of it," Miss Castle sighed. Stewie, Miss Castle's dog, who had been lying on the floor beside his mistress, glared doubtingly at at us between dozes, suddenly ran to his front door, barking ferociously, his red mane standing straight up. "Suey!" Miss Castle slapped her knee. "Suey, come here!" The dog merely flattened its ears and looked from its mistress towards the door again, as if measuring a decision. He growled deep in his throat. "It's the ghost," Sandra said lightly. "He's behind the whole thing." Sandra sat curled up in one corner of the sofa and tilted her head to one side as she spoke, like a very clever child. Jeff laughed sharply. "Oh, they'll tell some very good stories." With a sigh, Miss Castle rose and dragged Suey back by his collar. "If I didn't feel so self-conscious about it, I'd take him to an analyst," she said. "Sit, Suey. Here's a cashew nut for you." "I'm very fond of ghost stories," I said, smiling. "Oh, well," Jeff murmured, mildly disparaging. "Go ahead, Jeff," Sandra urged him over the rim of the glass. "They'd like to hear it." Jeff was a literary agent, a tall, sallow man with dark, oily hair that he was continually pushing out of his eyes with his fingers. As he spoke, he smiled lopsidedly, as if defending against the probability of being taken seriously. "All I know is that back in the late 17th century, the Spanish used to have hangings here. The victims are supposed to float around at night and make noises." "Criminals?" I asked. "Of the worst sort," said Sandra. "What was the story Guy Rilling told you, Joyce?" Come out with a curious inward relish that suggested she knew the story perfectly well herself. "Is that Guy Rilling the director?" I asked. "Yes," Jeff said. "He owns those stables down the canyon." "I've seen him," Ellen said. "Such lovely horses." Joyce Castle hoisted her empty glass into the air. "Jeff, well, will you find me another?" "You keep straying from the subject," said Sandra gently. "Fetch me another too, darling." She handed a glass to Jeff as he went by. "Like a good boy." "I didn't mean to interrupt, Joyce. Go on." She gestured toward us to the intended audience. Ellen stiffened slightly in her chair. "It seems that there was one hombre of outstanding depravity," Joyce Castle said languidly. "I forgot the name. He murdered, stole, raped. One of those endless Spanish names with boots in it. A nobleman, I think," Guy said. "A charming sort. Mad, of course, and completely unpredictable. They hanged him at last for some unsavory escapade in a nunnery. You two are moving in a neighborhood rich with tradition." We all laughed. "What about the noises?" Ellen asked Sandra. "Have you heard anything?" "Of course," Sandra said, tipping her head prettily. Every inch of her skin was tanned the color of coffee from afternoons by the pool. It was a form of leisure that her husband, with his bilious coloring and lank hair, apparently did not enjoy. "Everywhere I've ever lived," he said, his grin growing crookeder and more apologetic, "there were noises in the night you couldn't explain. Here there are all kinds of wildlife, foxes, coons, possums, even coyotes up on the ridge. They're all active after sundown." Ellen's smile of pleasure at this news turned to distress as Sandra remarked in an offhand way. "We found our poor kitty positively torn to bits one morning. It was all blood. We never did find his head." "A fox," Jeff put in quickly. Everything he said seemed hollow. Something came from him like a vapor. I thought it was grief. Sandra gazed smugly into her lap as if hugging a secret to herself. She seemed enormously pleased. It occurred to me that Sandra was trying to frighten us. In a way, it relieved me. She was enjoying herself too much, I thought, looking at her spoiled, brown face, to be frightened herself. After the incident at the tree, everything went well for some weeks. Thoughts went up rapidly. Ellen and I visited it as often as we could, walking over the raw ground and making our home in our mind's eye. Fireplace grill here, refrigerator here, a Picasso print there. "Ted," Ellen said timidly, "I've been thinking, why don't we fix up the extra bedroom as a children's room?" Waited. "Now that we'll be living out here, our friends will have to stay overnight more often. Most of them have young children. It would be nice for them." I slipped my arm around her shoulders. She knew I understood. It was a delicate matter. She raised her face, and I kissed her between her brows. The only counter signal, the keystones of our life together, a life of sensibility and tact. "Hey, you two," Sandra Sheffitz called from across the street. She stood on her front porch in a pink bathing suit, her skin brown, her hair nearly white. "How about a swim?" "No suits." "Come on, we got plenty." Ellen and I debated the question with a glance, settled it with a nod. As I came out onto the patio in one of Jeff's suits, Sandra said, "Ted, you're as pale as a ghost. Don't you get any sun where you are?" She lay in a chaise lounge behind huge elliptical sunglasses encrusted with glass gems. "I stay inside too much writing articles." "You're welcome to come here anytime you like," she smiled suddenly, showing me a row of small perfect teeth. "And swim." Ellen appeared in her borrowed suit, a red one with a short ruffle. She shaded her eyes as the sun, glittering metallically on the water, struck her full in the face. Sandra pushed her forward as if to introduce my wife to me. "You look much better in that suit than I ever did." Red nails splashed on Ellen's arm. Ellen smiled guardedly. The two women were about the same height, but Ellen was narrower in the shoulders, thicker through the waist and hips. As they came toward me, it seemed to me that Ellen was the one I did not know. Her familiar body became strange. He looked out of proportion. Hairs that on Sandra were all but invisible except when the sun turned them to silver, lay flat and dark on Ellen's pallid arm. As if sensing the sudden distance between us, Ellen took my hand. "Let's jump in together," she said gaily. "No hanging back." Sandra retreated to the chaise lounge to watch us, her eyes invisible behind her outrageous glasses, her head on one side. Incidents began again and continued at intervals. Guy Rowing, whom I never met, but whose pronouncements on the supernatural reached me through others from time to time, like messages from an oracle, claims that the existence of the living dead is a particularly excruciating one, as they hover between two states of being. Their memories keep the passions of life forever and fresh and sharp, but they are able to relieve them only on a monstrous expense of will and energy, which leaves them literally helpless for months or sometimes even years after. This is why materializations and other forms of tangible action are relatively rare. There are, of course, exceptions. Sandra, our most frequent translator of Rowling's theories, pointed out one evening with odd joy that accompanied all of her remarks on the subject. Some ghosts are terrifically active, particularly the insane ones who, ignorant of the limitations of death as they were and the possibilities of life, transcend them with the dynamism that is exclusively the property of madness. Generally, however, it was Rowling's opinion that a ghost was more to be pitied than feared. Sandra quoted him as having said, "The notion of a haunted house is a misconception semantically. It's not the house but the soul itself that is haunted." On Saturday, August 6th, a workman-length pipe was blinded in one eye by an acetylene torch. On Thursday, September 1st, a rock slide on the hill behind us dumped 4 tons of dirt and rock on the half-finished house and halted work for 2 weeks. On Sunday, October 9th, my birthday, oddly enough, while visiting the house alone, I slipped on a stray screw and struck my head on a can of latex paint, which opened a gash requiring 10 stitches. I rushed across to the Sheffets. Sandra answered the door in her bathing suit and a magazine in her hand. "Ted?" She appeared at me. "I scarcely recognize you through the blood. Come in, I'll call the doctor. Try not to zip on the furniture, will you?" I told the doctor of the screw on the floor, the big can of paint. I did not tell him that my foot had slipped because I had turned too quickly, and that I had turned too quickly because the sensation had grown on me that there was someone behind me, close enough to touch me, perhaps, because something hovered there, fetid and damp and cold, and almost palpable in its nearness. I remember shivering violently as I turned, as if the sun of this burning summer's day had been replaced by a mysterious star without warmth. I did not tell the doctor this, nor anyone else. In November, Los Angeles burns. After the long drought of summer, the sap goes underground, and the baked hills seem to gasp in pain for the merciful release of either life or death, rain or fire. Invariably, fire comes first, spreading through the outlying parts of the country like an epidemic, till the sky is livid and starless at night and overhung with dun-colored smoke during the day. There was a huge fire in Tujunga, north of us, the day Ellen and I moved into our new house. Handsome, severe, aggressively new on its dry hillside, under a choked sky the color of earth and muffled fly-specked sun. Sandra and Jeff came over to help, and in the evening Joyce Castle stopped by with Suey and a magnum of champagne. Ellen clasped her hands under her chin. "What a lovely surprise! I hope it's cold enough. I've had it in my refrigerator since 4 o'clock. Welcome to the canyon. You're nice people. You remind me of my parents. God, it's hot. I've been weeping all day on account of the smoke. You'll have air conditioning, I suppose? Jeff was sprawled in a chair with his long legs straight in front of him in a way a cripple might put aside a pair of crutches. Joyce, you're an angel. Excuse me if I don't get up. I'm recuperating. You're excused, doll. You're excused. Ted, Ellen said softly, why don't you get some glasses? Jeff hauled in his legs. Can I give you a hand? Sit still, Jeff. He sighed. I hadn't realized I was so out of shape. He looked more cadaverous than ever after our afternoon of lifting and shoving. Sweat had collected in the hollows under his eyes. Shall I show you in the house, Joyce? Old Ted is in the kitchen. I love you, Eileen, Joyce said. Take me on the whole tour. Sandra followed me into the kitchen. She leaned against the wall and smoked, supporting her left elbow in the palm of her right hand. She didn't say a word. Through the open door, I could see Jeff's outstretched legs from the calves down. Thanks for all the help today, I said to Sandra in a voice unaccountably close to a whisper. I could hear Joyce and Ellen as they moved from room to room, their voices swelling and dying. It's all steel. You mean everything? Walls and all? Aren't you afraid of lightning? Oh, we're safely grounded, I think. Jeff yawned noisily in the living room. Wordlessly, Sandra put his tray on the kitchen table as I rummaged in an unpacked carton full of glasses. She watched me steadily and coolly, as if she expected me to entertain her. I wanted to say something further to break the silence, which was becoming unnatural and oppressive. The sounds around us seemed only to isolate us in a ring of intimacy. With her head on one side, Sandra smiled at me. I could hear her rapid breathing. What's this? A nursery? Helen, Bubs! No, it's only for our friends' children's. Sandra's eyes were blue, the color of shallow water. She seemed faintly amused, as if we were sharing in a conspiracy. I was anxious to repudiate by making some prosaic remark in a loud voice for all to hear, but a kind of pain developed in my chest as the words seemed damned there, and I only smiled at her foolishly. With every passing minute of silence, the more possible it became to break through, and the more it felt drawn in, the intrigue of which, through which I was ignorant, was sorely guilty. Without so much as a touch, she had made us lovers. Eileen stood in the doorway, half turned away as if her first impulse had been to run. She appeared to be deep in thought, her eyes fixed on the steel, cream-colored door jamb. Sandra began to talk to Ellen in a dry, satirical voice. It was a chatter of the idlest sort, but she was destroying, as I had wished to destroy, the absurd notion that there was something between us. I could see Ellen's confusion. She hung on Sandra's words, watching her lips attentively, as if this elegant, tanned woman, calmly smoking and talking of trifles, were her savior. As for myself, I felt as if I'd lost the power of speech entirely. If I joined in with Sandra's carefully innocent chatter, I would only be joining in the deception against my wife. If I proclaimed the truth and ended everything by bringing it into the open. But what truth? What was there in fact to bring in the open? What was there to end? Feeling in the air? An intimidation? The answer was nothing. Of course, I did not even like Sandra very much. There was something cold and unpleasant about her. There was nothing to proclaim because nothing had happened. Where's Joyce? I asked finally, out of her dry mouth. Doesn't she want to see the kitchen? Ellen turned slowly towards me, as if it cost her a great effort. She'll be here in a minute, she said tonelessly, and I became aware of Joyce and Jeff's voices from the living room. Ellen studied my face, her pupils oddly dilated under the pinkish fluorescent light, as if she were trying to penetrate to the bottom of a great darkness that lay beneath my chance remark. Was it a code of some kind? A new signal for her that I would shortly make clear? What did it mean? I smiled at her, and she responded with a smile of her own, a tentative and formal upturning of her mouth, as if I were a familiar face whose name escaped her for the moment. Joyce came in behind Ellen. I hate kitchens. I never go into mine. She looked from one to the other of us. Am I interrupting something? At 2 o'clock in the morning, I sat up in bed, wide awake. The bedroom was bathed in the dark red glow of the fire which had come closer in the night. A thin autumnal veil of smoke hung in the room. Ellen on her side, asleep, one hand cupped on a pillow next to her face, as if waiting for something to be put in it. I had no idea why I was so fully awake, but I threw out the covers and went to the window to check on the fire. I could see no flame, but the hills stood out blackly against a turgid sky that bellowed and sagged as the wind blew and relented. Then I heard the sound. I am a person who sets store by precision in the use of words. In the field of technical writing, this is a necessity. But I can think of no word to describe that sound. The closest I can come with a word of my own invention is "glump." It came erratically, neither loud nor soft. It was rather pervasive and without location. It was not a solid sound. There was something vague and whispering about it. And from time to time it began with the suggestion of a sigh, a shuffling dissipation in the air that seemed to take form and die in the same instant. In a way I cannot define, it was mindless, without will or reason, yet impotent. Because I cannot explain it immediately, I went to seek explanation. I stepped into the hall and switched on the light, pressing the noiseless button. The light came down out of a fixture set flush into the ceilings and diffused through a milky plastic-like Japanese rice paper. Clean, indestructible walls rose perpendicularly around me. Through the slight haze of smoke came the smell of newness, sweet and metallic, more like a car than a house. And still the sound went on. It seemed to be coming from the room at the end of the hall, a room we had designed for our friend's children. It was open, and I could see a gray patch that was a west window. The lump, the lump, the lump, the lump. Fixing on a gray patch, I moved down the hall while my legs made themselves heavy as logs, and all the while I repeated myself. The house is settled. All new houses settle and make strange noises. And so lucid was I that I believed I was not afraid. I was walking down the bright new hall of my new steel house to investigate a noise. For the house might be settling unevenly, or an animal might be up to mischief. Raccoons regularly raided the garbage cans, I'd been told. There might be something wrong with the plumbing or with the radiant heating system that warmed our steel and vinyl floors. And now, like the responsible master of the house, I had located the apparent center of the sound and was going responsibly towards it. In a second or two, very likely, I would know. Glump, glump. The gray of the window turned rosy as I came near enough to see the hillside beyond it. That black was underbrush, and that pink the dusty swath cut by a bulldozer before it had run amok. I had watched the accident from just about the spot where I stood now, and the obliterated hole where the tree had been, laid firmly over with a prefabricated floor of the room, whose darkness I would eradicate by touching with my right hand the light switch inside the door. Ed? Blood boomed in my ears. I had the impression that my heart had burst. I clutched at the wall for support. Yet of course I knew it was Ellen's voice, and I answered her calmly. Yes, it's me. What's the matter? I heard the bedclothes rustle. Don't get up, I'm coming right in. The noise had stopped. There was nothing, only the almost inaudible hum of the refrigerator, the stirring of the wind. Ellen was sitting up in bed. I was just checking on the fire, she said. I patted my side of the bed, and an instant before I turned out the hall light, I saw her smile. I was just dreaming about you, she said softly as I climbed into the sheets. She rolled against me. Why, you're trembling. I should have worn my robe. You'll be warm in a minute. Her fragrant body lay against mine, but I remained rigid as stone and just as cold, staring at the ceiling. My mind a furious blank. After a moment she said, Ted. It was her signal, always hesitant, always tremulous, that I meant I was to roll over and take her in my arms. Instead I answered, What? Just as if I had not understood. For a few seconds I sensed her struggling against her reserve, giving a further sign that would pierce my peculiar distraction and tell me she wanted love. But it was too much for her, too alien. Her coldness had created a vacuum she was too unpracticed to fill, coldness sudden and inexplicable, unless... She withdrew slowly and pulled the covers up under her chin. Finally she asked, Ted, is there something happening I should know about? She had remembered Sandra and a curious scene in the kitchen. It took, I knew, great courage for Ellen to ask that question, though she must have known my answer. No, I'm just tired. We've had a busy day. Good night, dear. I kissed her on the cheek and searched her eyes in the shadow of the fire, searching mine, asking the questions she could not give voice to. I turned away, somehow ashamed, because I could not supply the answer that would fill her need, because there's no answer at all. The fire was brought under control after burning some 800 acres and several homes, and 3 weeks later the rains came. Jack Manson came out one Sunday to see how the house was holding up, checked the foundation, the roof, and all the seams, and pronounced it tight as a drum. We sat and looked moodily at the glass doors out onto the patio, a flat land of grayish mud which threatened to swamp within a thin ooze of silt and gravel, the few flagstones I had set in the ground. Ellen was in the bedroom lying down. She had gotten into the habit of taking a nap after lunch, though it was I, not she, who lay stark awake night after night, explaining away sounds that became more and more impossible to explain away. The gagging sound that sometimes accompanied the balloon, and the strangling expulsion of air that followed it were surely the result of some disturbance in the water pipes. Footsteps that came slowly down the hall and stopped outside our closed door and went away again with something like a low chuckle was merely night contracting our metal house after the heat of the day. Through all this, Ellen slept as if in a stupor. She seemed to have become addicted to sleep. She went to bed at 9, got up at 10 the next morning, napped in the afternoon, and moved about lethargically as the rest of the time with a Mexican shawl around her shoulders, complaining of the cold. The doctor examined her for mononucleosis but found nothing. He said perhaps it was her sinuses and that she should rest as much as she wanted. After a protracted silence, Jack put aside his drink and stood up. I guess I'll go along. I'll tell Ellen. What the hell for? Let her sleep. Tell her I hope she feels better. He turned to frown at the room of the house he had designed and built. Are you happy here? He asked suddenly. Happy? Repeated the word awkwardly. Of course we're happy. We love the house. It's just a little noisy at night, that's all. I stammered it out like the first word of monstrous confession, but Jack seemed hardly to hear it. He waved a hand. How's settling? He squinted from one side of the room to the other. I don't know. There's something about it. It's not right. Maybe it's just the weather, the light. It could be friendlier, you know what I mean? It seems cheerless. I watched him with kind of a wild hope, as if he might magically fathom my terror, me which I could not do for myself, permit it to be discussed calmly between two men of temperate mind. Jack was not looking for the cause of the gloom, but a cure for it. Why not try putting down a couple of orange rugs in this room? I stared at the floor as if 2 orange rugs were an infallible charm. Yes, I said, I think we'll try that. Ellen scuffed in, pushing back her face puffy with sleep. Jack, she said, when the weather clears and I'm feeling livelier, you and Anne and Sylvan must come and spend the night. We'd like that after the noises died down, he added satirically to me. Noises? What noises? A certain blankness came over Ellen's face when she looked at me now. The expression was the same, but what had been open in it before was now merely empty. She had put up her guard against me. She suspected me of keeping things from her. At night, I said, the house is settling. You don't hear them. When Jack had gone, Ellen sat with a cup of tea in the chair where Jack had sat, looking out at the mud. The long purple shawl hung all the way to her knees and made her look armless. There seemed no explanation for the 2 white hands that curled under the teacup in her lap. Sad thing, she said tonelessly. I can't help but feel sorry for Sandra. Why is that? I asked guardedly. Joyce was here yesterday. She told me she and Jeff have been having an affair off and on for 6 years. I turned to see how I would receive this news. Well, that explains the way Joyce and Sandra behaved towards each other, I said with pleasant glance straight into Ellen's eyes. There I encountered only the reflection of the glass doors, even to the rain trickling down them, and I had the eerie sensation of having been shown a picture of the truth, as if she were weeping secretly in the depths of a soul I could no longer touch. For Ellen did not believe in my innocence. I'm not sure I still believed in it myself. Very likely Jeff and Joyce did neither. It's impossible to say what Sandra believed. She behaved as if our infidelity were an accomplished fact. In its way, it was a performance of genius. Sandra never touched me except in the most accidental or impersonal way. Even her glances, the foundation on which she built the myth of our liaison, had nothing soft in them. They were probing and sly, and were always accompanied by a furtive smile, as if we merely shared some private joke. Yet there was something in the way she did it, in the tilt of her head perhaps, that plainly implied that the joke was at everyone else's expense, and she'd been taken to calling me darling. Sandra and Jeff had a feeble-minded child off an institution somewhere, Ellen said. That set them against each other, apparently. Joyce told you all this. She just mentioned it casually as the most natural thing in the world. She assumed we must have known. But I don't want to know things like that about my friends. That's showbiz, I guess. You and I are both provincials at heart. It must be a very unhappy girl. Hard to tell with Sandra. I wonder what she tries to do with her life. If she looks for anything outside. I waited. Probably not, Ellen answered her own question. She seemed very self-contained, almost cold. I was treated to the spectacle of my wife fighting with herself to delay a wound that she was convinced would come home to her sooner or later. She did not want to believe in my infidelity. I might have comforted her with lies. I might have told her that Sandra and I rendezvoused downtown in a cafeteria and made love in a second-rate hotel on the evenings when I called to say I was working late. Then the wound would be open and could be cleaned and cured. It would be painful, of course, but I would have confided in her again and our old system would be restored. Watching Ellen torture herself with doubt, I was tempted to tell her those lies. The truth never tempted me. To have admitted that I knew that what she was thinking would have been tantamount to an admission of guilt. How could I suspect such a thing unless it were true? And was I to explain my coldness by terrifying her with vague stories of indescribable sounds which she never heard? And so the two of us sat on, dumb and chilled, in our watertight house as the daylight began to go. And then a sort of exultation seized me. What if my terror were no more real than Ellen's? What if both our ghosts were only ghosts of the mind, which needed only a little common sense to guide them away? And I saw that if I could drive away my ghost, Ellen would soon follow, for the secrets that shut me away from her would be gone. It was a revelation, a triumph. What's that up there? Ellen pointed to something that looked like glowing at the top of the glass doors. It's a tail, Ted. There must be some animal on the roof. Only the bushy tip was visible. As I drew close to it, I could see raindrops clinging as if it was a geometrical system to eat black hair. It looks like a raccoon tail. What would a coon be doing out so early? Put on a coat and went outside. The tail hung limply over the edge, ringed with white and swaying phlegmatically in the breeze. The animal itself was hidden below the low parapet. Using the ship's ladder at the back of the house, I climbed up to look at it. The human mind, just like the other parts of the anatomy, is an organ of habit. Its capabilities are bounded by the limits of precedent. It thinks what it is used to thinking. Faced with a phenomenon beyond its range, it rebels, it rejects, sometimes it collapses. My mind, which for weeks had steadfastly refused to honor the evidence of my senses, that there was something else living in the house with Ellen and me, something unearthly and evil, largely on the basis of insufficient evidence, is now forced to subsequent denial by saying, as Jeff had said, fox. It was, of course, ridiculous. The chances of a fox winning a battle with a raccoon were very slight at best, let alone what had been done to this raccoon. The body lay on the far side of the roof. I didn't see the head at all until I had stumbled against it and it had rolled over and over to come to rest against the parapet, where it's pointed its masked ferret face at me. Only because my beleaguered mind kept repeating, like a voice, Ellen mustn't know, Ellen mustn't know, was I able to take up the dismembered parts and hurl them with all my strength onto the hillside and answer when Ellen called out, "What is it, Ted? Must have been a coon. It's gone now," this perfect level voice, before I went to the back of the roof and vomited. I recalled Sandra's mention of their mutilated cat and phoned Jeff at his agency. "We'll discuss it over lunch," I told myself. I had a great need to talk, and action impossible within my own home, where every day the silence became denser and more intractable. Once or twice, Ellen ventured to ask, "What's the matter, Ted?" I answered, "Nothing." There our talk ended. I could see in her wary eyes I was not the man she had married. I was cold, secretive. The servant's room, furnished with double trunks, the bunks and wallpaper figured with toys, stood like a rebuke. Ellen kept the door closed most of the time, though once or twice, in the late afternoon, I'd found her in there moving about aimlessly, touching objects as if half in wonder that they should still linger on after so many sterile months. Foolish hope had failed. Neither did our friends bring their children to stay. They did not because we did not ask them. The silence had brought with it profound and debilitating inertia. Ellen's face seemed perpetually swollen, the features cloudy and amorphous, the eyes dull, her whole body become bloated, as if an enormous cache of pain had backed up inside her. We moved through the house in our orbits like two sleepwalkers, going about our business out of habit. Our friends called at first, puzzled, a little hurt, but soon stopped and left us to ourselves. Occasionally we saw the Sheffets. Jeff was looking seedier and seedier, told bad jokes, drank too much, and seemed always ill at ease. Sandra did most of the talking, chattering blandly at indifferent subjects and always hinting by gesture, word, or glance at her underground affairs. Jeff and I had lunch at the Brown Derby on Vine Street under charcoal caricatures of show folk. At the table next to ours was an agent was eulizing an actor in a voice hoarse with trumped-up enthusiasm to a large purple-faced man who was devoting his entire attention to a bowl of his choice. What the hell that is? It's a crazy business, Jeff said to me. I'd be glad you're not in it. I see what you mean, I replied. Jeff had not the faintest idea of why I had brought him there, nor had I given him any clue. We were breaking the ice. Jeff looked at me with that trick of his mouth. I grinned back. We are friends. Presumably there is a message we were grinning at each other. Was he my friend? Was I his friend? He lived across the street. I passed across perhaps once a week. We joked together. He sat always in the same chair in our living room, twisted from one sprawl to another. There was a straight white chair in his living room that I preferred. Friendships had been founded on less, I suppose. Yet he had an idiot child locked off in an asylum somewhere, and a wife who amused herself with infidelity by suggestion. I had a demon loose in my house, and a wife gnawing with suspicion and growing remote and old because of it. And I had said, I see what you mean. It seemed insufferable. I caught Jeff's eye. You remember we once talked about a ghost? My tone was bantering. Perhaps I meant to make a joke. I remember. Sandra said something about a cat of yours that was killed. The one the fox got. That's what you said. That's not what Sandra said. Jeff shrugged. What about it? I found a dead raccoon on our roof. Your roof? Yes, it was pretty awful. Jeff toyed with his fork. All pretense of levity was at an end. No head? Worse. For a few moments he was silent. I felt him struggle with himself before he spoke. Maybe you better move out, Ted, he said. He was trying to help. I knew it. With a single swipe, he had tried to push the restraint that hung between us. My friend, he was putting out his hand to me, and I supposed I must have known what he suggested. But I could not accept it. It was not what I wanted to hear. Jeff, I can't do that, I said intolerantly, as if he had missed my point. We've only been living here 5 months. It cost me $22,000 to build that place. You have to live in it at least a year under the GI loan. Well, you know best, Ted. Bob dipped at me again. I just wanted to talk, I said, irritated at the ease which he had given. I wanted to find out what you knew about this ghost business. Not very much. Sandra knows more than I do. I doubt that you would advise me to leave a house I just built for no reason at all. There seems to be some sort of jinx on the property, that's all. Whether it was a ghost or not, I couldn't tell you, he replied, annoyed in his turn at the line the conversation was taking. How does Ellen feel about this? She doesn't know. About the raccoon? About anything. You mean there's more? There are noises, at night. I'd speak to Sandra if I were you. She's gone into the business much more deeply than I. When we first moved in, she used to hang around your land a good deal. Just snooping. Particularly after that cat was killed. She was having some difficulty with his words. It struck me in conversation with him in pain. He was showing his teeth now in a smile of grimace. Dangling an arm over the back of his chair, he seemed loose to the point of collapse. He circled warily about his wife's name. Look, Jeff, I said. I took a breath. About Sandra. Jeff cut me off with a wave of his hand. Don't worry, I know Sandra. Then you'll know there's nothing between us? It's just her way of amusing herself. Sandra's a strange girl. She does the same thing with me. She works with me, but we don't sleep together. He picked up his spoon and stared at it uneasily. It started when she became pregnant. After she had the boy, everything between us stopped. You knew we had a son? He's in a sanitarium in the valley. Can't you do anything? Sure. Grace Castle. I don't know what I'd have done without her. I mean divorce. Sandra won't divorce me, and I can't divorce her. No grounds. He shrugged as if the whole thing were of no concern at all to him. What could I say? I want to divorce my wife because of the way she looks at other men. She's scrupulously faithful. To whom, Jeff? To you. To whom? I don't know. To herself, maybe, he grumbled. Whether with encouragement he might have gone on, I don't know, or cut him off. I sensed that with this enigmatic remark, he was giving me my cue, and that if I had chosen to respond to it, he would have told me what I had asked him to want to find out. And all at once, I was terrified. I did not want to hear it. I did not want to hear it at all. And so I laughed in a quiet way and said, undoubtedly, undoubtedly. Pushed it behind the closed door of my mind, where I had stored all the impossibilities of the last month. Footsteps, sounds in the night, mutilated raccoon, or else by recognizing them, go mad. Jeff suddenly looked me full in the face. His cheeks were flushed, teeth camped together. Look, Ted, he said, can you take the afternoon off? I gotta go to the sanitarium and sign some papers. We're gonna transfer the boy. He has fits of violence and does awful things. He's finally gotten out of hand. What about Sandra? Sandra's signed already. She likes to go alone to visit him. She seems to like to have him to herself. I'd appreciate it, Ted. The moral support. You don't have to come in. You can wait in the car. It's only about 30 miles from here. We'll be back by dinner time. His voice shook. Tears clouded the yellow-stained whites of his eyes. He looked like a man with a fever. I noticed how shrunken his neck had become as it revolved in his collar, how his head caved in sharply at the temples. He fastened one hand on my arm like a claw. Of course I'll go, Jeff, I said. I'll call the office. They can get along without me for one afternoon. He collected himself in an instant. I'd appreciate it. I promise you won't be so bad. The sanitarium was in the San Fernando Valley, a complex of new stucco buildings on a newly seeded lawn. Everywhere there were signs that read, "Please keep off, folks." Midget saplings stood in a disk of powdered earth along the cement walks, angling white and hot through the grass. On these walks, faithfully observing the signs, the inmates strolled. Their traffic, as it flowed somnolently from one avenue to another, was controlled by attendants stationed at intersections, conspicuous in white uniforms and pit helmets. After a time, it became unbearably hot in the car, and I climbed out. Unless I wished to pace in the parking lot among the cars, I had no choice but to join the inmates and their visitors on the walks. I chose a nearly deserted walk, and we went slowly toward the building that had a yard attached to it, surrounded by a wire fence. From the slide and the jungle gym in it, I judged it to be for the children. Then I saw Jeff come into it. With him was a nurse pushing a kind of cart railed around like an oversized toddler. Strapped into it was the boy. He was human, I suppose, for he had all the equipment assigned to humans, yet I had the feeling that were not for the cart, the creature would have crawled on his belly like an alligator. He had the eyes of an alligator, too. Sleepy, cold, soulless, set in a swarthy face and a head that seemed to run in a horizontal direction rather than the vertical, like an egg lying on its side. The features were devoid of any vestige of intelligence. The mouth hung open and the chin shone with saliva. While Jeff and the nurse talked, he sat under the sun, inert and repulsive. I turned on my heel and bolted, feeling that I intruded on a disgrace. I imagined that I had been given a glimpse of the diseased universe, mere existence of which constituted a threat to my life. The sight of that monstrous boy with his cold, bestial eyes made me feel as if, by stumbling on this shame, I somehow shared in it with Jeff. Yet I told myself that the greatest service I could do him was to pretend that I had seen nothing, knew nothing, and not place on him the hardship of talking about something that obviously caused him pain. He returned to the car, pale and shaky and wanting a drink. We stopped first at a place called Joey's on Hollywood Way. After that, it was Cherry Lane on Vine Street, where a couple girls propositioned us. Then a stop at Brown Derby again, where I had left my car. Jeff downed the liquor in a joyless, businesslike way, and talked to me in a rapid, confidential voice about a book he had just sold to Warner Brothers Studio for an exorbitant sum of money. Trash, in his opinion, but that was always the way. Parasites made it. Pretty soon there wouldn't be any good writers left. There'd only be competent parasites and incompetent parasites. This was perhaps the third time we'd had this conversation. Now Jeff repeated it mechanically, all the time looking down at the table where he was painstakingly breaking a red swizzle stick in ever tinier pieces. When we left the restaurant, the sun had gone down, and the evening chill of the desert on which the city had been built had settled in. Faint pink glow from the vanished sun still lingered on the top of the Broadway building. Jeff took a deep breath, then fell into a fit of coughing. Damn smog. Goddamn city. Can't think of a single reason why I live here. He started towards his Daimler, tottering slightly. How about driving home with me? I said. You can pick your car up tomorrow. He fumbled in the glove compartment and drew out his small cigars. Stuck one between his teeth where it jutted unlit towards the end of his nose. I'm not going home tonight, Ted friend, he said. If you'll just drop me up the street at Cherry Lane, I'll remember you for life. Are you sure? I'll go with you if you want. Jeff shook a forefinger at me archly. Ted, you're a gentleman and a scholar, but my advice to you is go home and take care of your wife. No, seriously, take care of her. Ted, as for myself, I should go quietly to seed in the Cherry Lane Cafe. I started towards my car when Jeff called out to me again. I just want to tell you, Ted friend, my wife was once just as nice as your wife. I had gone no more than a mile when the last glimmer of light left the sky and night fell like a shutter. The sky above the neon Sunset Boulevard turned jet black, and a sickly half-moon rose and was immediately obscured by thick fog that lowered itself steadily as I traveled west, until at the foot of Clay Canyon it began to pat my windshield with little smears of moisture. The house was dark, and at first I thought Ellen must have gone out, but then seeing her old Plymouth in the driveway, I felt the grip of a cold and unreasoned fear. The events of the day seemed to crowd around and hover at my head in the fog, and the commonplace sight of that car, together with the blackness and silence of the house, sent me into a panic as I ran for the door. I pushed at it with my shoulder as if expecting it to be locked, but it swung open easily, and I found myself in the darkened living room with no light anywhere, and only sound the rhythm of my own short breathing. Ellen! I called in a high, querulous voice I hardly recognized. Ellen! I seemed to lose my balance. My head swam. It was as if this darkness and silence were the one last iota that the chamber of horrors in my mind could not hold, and the door snapped open a crack, emitting a cloudy light that stank of corruption, and I saw the landscape of my denial get tuned. It was a children's room, rats nested in the double bunks, mold caked red wallpaper, and in it an insane Spanish Don hung by its neck from a dead tree, his heels volumping against the wall, foppish clothes rubbing as he revolved slowly in invisible currents of bad air. And as he swung toward me, I saw his familiar reptile eyes open and stare at me with loathing and contempt. I conceded. It is here, and it is evil, and I have left my wife alone in the house with it, and now she has been sucked into that cold eternity, where the dumb shades store their plasms against an anguished century of speech, single word issuing from the petrified throat, a scream, or sigh, or groan, symbols dredged up from a lifetime of eloquence to slake the bottomless thirst of living death. And then a light went on over my head, and I found myself in the hall outside the children's room. Ellen was in her nightgown, smiling at me. Ted, why on earth are you standing here in the dark? I was just taking a nap. Do you want some dinner? Won't you say something? Are you all right? She came toward me. She seemed extraordinarily lovely. Her eyes, a deeper blue than Sandra's, looked almost purple. She seemed young and slender again. Her old serenity shone through like a restored beacon. I'm all right, I said hoarsely. Are you sure you are? Of course I am, she laughed. Why shouldn't I be? I'm feeling much, much better. She took my hand and kissed it gaily. I'll put on some clothes and then we'll have our dinner. She turned and went down the hall to our bedroom, leaving me with a clear view into the children's room. Though the room itself was dark, I could see by the hall light the covers on the lower bunk had been turned back and that the bed had been slept in. Ellen, I said. Ellen, were you sleeping in the children's room? Yes, she said, and I rustle of a dress as she carried it from the closet. I was in there moving around to come home. I got sleepy and lay down on the bunk. What are you doing, by the way? Working late? And nothing happened. Why? What should have happened? I could not answer. My head throbbed with joy. It was over. Whatever it was over. All unknowing, Ellen had faced the very heart of the evil and slept through it like a child, and now she was herself again without having been tainted by the knowledge of what she had defeated. I had protected her by my silence, by my refusal to share my terror with this woman whom I loved. I reached aside and touched the light button. There was a brave red wallpaper scattered over with toys, red and white curtains, blue and red bedspreads. It was a fine room, a fine gay room fit for children. Ellen came down the hall in her slip. Is anything wrong, Ted? You seem so distraught. Is everything all right at the office? Yes, I said. I was with Jeff Shevitz. We went to see his boy in the asylum. Poor Jeff, he leads a rotten life. Told Ellen the whole story every afternoon, speaking freely in my house for the first time since we moved there. Ellen listened carefully as she always did and wanted to know, when I had finished, what the boy looked like. Like an alligator, I said with disgust. Just like an alligator. Ellen's face took on an unaccountable expression of private glee. She seemed to be looking past me into the children's room, as if the source of her amusement lay there. At the same moment I shivered in a breath of profound cold, a thin clammy draft that might have warmed me on my last birthday had I been other than what I am. I had a sense of sudden dehydration, as if all the blood had vanished from my veins. I felt as if I were shrinking. When I spoke, my voice seemed to come from a throaty, rusty, and dry wood disuse. "Is that funny?" I whispered. My wife replied, "Funny? Oh no. It's just that I'm feeling so much better. I think I'm pregnant, Ted." She tipped her head in one side and smiled at me. And so lingers one of the dead, where a dream home houses eternal unrest, a chilling irony of bargains. As the neighborhood secret undeads, it reflects Hitchcock's enduring twists. In the 1980s, saw remakes like Psycho 2 and The Birds 2, 1994, influences horror's evolution. Anthologies preserved his essence. Did this house haunt you? Did this story seem eerily similar to the story The War of the Roses? Comment below. Next, The Real Thing by Robert Specht. Check your neighbors. Good night.
Pull up to the spotlights, flashing red and blue. Bass hitting hard, whole room vibrating through. Crowd going wild, hands up, lose control. We came for the rush, let the energy roll. Neon glow hitting, sweat dripping down. 808 I can shake the whole town. No tomorrow, just a nice to plan. Turn it up louder, yeah, that's who I am. Feel the build up, rising tension in the air. Everybody waiting, hearts beating everywhere. Jubilee rush, let it hit. Whole floor jump when the vibe don't. Jubilee rush, hands high, feel the fire. We chasing that high, taking it high. They rush. Jubilee, Jubilee, Jubilee. Yeah, we on the night. Phones in the air, flashes light the scene. Vibes on max, living out the dream. No brakes, full throttle, pedal to the floor. This energy forever. Always want more, confetti raining, lasers cut the smoke. Crowd surfing waves, nobody going broke. From dusk till dawn, we don't ever stop. This is our jubilee. Feel the rush, feel the rush. Feel the tension building, heartbeat sing to the kick. Jubilee rush, let it hit. Whole floor jump, when the vibe don't. Jubilee rush, hands high, feel the fire. We chasing that high, taking it high. Jubilee rush, jubilee rush, jubilee rush. Yeah, we on the night, on the night, on the night, on the night. Night.